No one should be agitating for war with North Korea or war on the Korean Peninsula. Our military is always prepared if necessary, but the cost of war with North Korea would be higher than anything we've seen in generations. We need to do everything we can right now to forestall the possibility of war.
So that is Rhode Island Senator and top Democrat on the Senate Armed Forces Committee, Jack Reed, pushing for a more unified rhetoric from the White House on the handling of North Korea. Reed just returned from Seoul, where he says officials are confused by the president's reactions and losing confidence. The rogue regime now saying nuclear war could break out at any moment.
Calls the exercises unusual and notable, mostly occurring on the east coast of the country. They haven't been seen for a long time. Our contact goes on to say that they could be in a response to threats by the U.S. of tactical strikes against North Korea. What is important, Sandra, is that these drills, one of the locations, a place where North Korea has been launching missiles from. This as the state news agency of the regime, Kim Jong-un, promising today more satellite launches in its so-called space program. We were in North Korea for one of these rocket launches. This space program, widely seen as just a cover for the banned missile testing. Sandra.
And what else has Secretary Mattis said over the weekend?
Former U.S. Navy four-star admiral and former 7th Fleet commander. Sir, thank you for joining us. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I agree with the assessment that we are getting to the point of either diplomacy is going to succeed or it's going to fail, and that I think this administration has been fairly consistent in saying that they're not going to stand for a nuclear-armed North Korea. We'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what the former administration, of course, said. National Security Advisor to President Obama, Susan Rice, said that basically we could tolerate a nuclear North Korea, that we have to pretty much accept the inevitable, were some of the things that she said. What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, my reaction to that statement is that the prior administration, and indeed succeeding administrations going back 20 years really, have tried to use the carrot and then the stick and then the carrot, all of which have failed miserably, because we are facing a dominant threat here that's very serious. And guess who's holding the bag? The American people. This is not a good situation, and we have not been very good diplomatically at trying to restrict them.
A lot of experts say the reason why this situation is different from the others is because you have a weapon in the hand of someone who doesn't mind starving his people, who doesn't mind apparently killing his own family members, who is truly, irrational. I guess we throw that word around a lot, but in this case, it seems that it certainly fits. Aren't there weapons that we can use to disable, say, their electric grid and other things that would be a step short of actually going to war, but would cause, some of these weapons to be damaged, destabilized? I mean, what are the other options?
Well, look, the line between intelligence gathering and intelligence work and an act of war is a very thin line. I would argue that taking down a nation's electric grid is an act of war. If someone or nation did it to us, I would certainly consider that an act of war. So we've got to be very careful here with what we're suggesting. The reality, though, is that we've got to exhaust diplomatic efforts, and then short of that, we've got to have ready a military response.
Very quick, the president is visiting Asia next month. He might go to the DMZ. Is that provocative?
Well, this is not the first time that we've had a head of state go to the DMZ. And we've had lots of members of Congress go there. So I would say it's not provocative in and of itself. Okay. Having said that, Kim Jong-un utilizes any action on our part and calls it provocative.
Okay. Sir, thank you. We appreciate your time.
You bet, Melissa.
Yeah, he wrapped up a trip to Asia in South Korea with his counterpart in Seoul, saying, and I quote, "There is outlaw behavior being conducted by North Korea. It is illegal and unnecessary." Their missile nuclear programs, that is. Also saying the U.S. would defeat any attack. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, he was also in Hawaii with his regional colleagues, echoing the theme. This as, finally, a nuclear weapon-capable B-2 stealth bomber made its rounds around the Pacific, various regions, according to the military this weekend, to keep its air crews and aircraft at a high state of readiness and proficiency. Perhaps also, Sandra, to send yet one more message to the North, this in advance of this major trip by President Trump to the Asia region, starting at the end of the week. Back to you.
Greg Palcott from London, thank you.
Fitted out for carrying nuclear weapons to unidentified areas of the Western Pacific ahead of next week's planned visit to the region by U.S. President Donald Trump. The flight plan for the nuclear-equipped bomber has not been released by the U.S. Strategic Command, STRATCOM, or the White House, although various U.S. bases in the region, including those in South Korea and Japan, make up a short list for the long-range warplane to resupply. The last documented time a B-2 visited the area was during a 2013 Pentagon promotional show of force tour over the Korean peninsula, according to the Japan Times. Flying to the Pacific area from its Missouri home at the Whiteman Air Force Base during the weekend, the B-2, with a range of over 6,000 miles, can be refueled in mid-flight, making it possible for the aircraft to deliver a nuclear weapon anywhere on the planet.
Pride. We're very specialized. There's only 20 aircraft, so there's a lot of unit cohesion that goes on there because we are the only ones. And being a part of that air superiority, being able to reach out and touch the enemy anytime, anywhere, it's an awesome feeling. Air superiority is very important, and nuclear deterrence is very important, and both of those are the main key points of the B-2 mission. So being on point with your maintenance is incredibly important, especially in a wartime, whether we're playing or we're actually, going to mess people up.
STRATCOM downplayed the bomber overflight, stating that the globetrotting mission was routine and was being conducted to familiarize aircrew with air bases and operations in different geographic combatant commands, enabling them to maintain a high state of readiness and proficiency, cited by JapanTimes.com. The STRATCOM statement also included remarks intended to allay the fears of regional U.S. allies Japan and South Korea ahead of Trump's visit, suggesting that the B-2 visit should be considered as a visible demonstration of commitment to our allies and enhancing regional security. Over the weekend, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis accused the People's Democratic Republic of Korea, DPRK, of engaging in outlaw activity, promising that Washington and its allies will never accept Pyongyang as a nuclear weapons-capable state. "I cannot imagine a condition under which the United States would accept North Korea as a nuclear power," Mattis declared.
The United States has once again said it will never accept North Korea as a nuclear state. U.S. Defense Chief James Mattis, who is visiting Seoul, said Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs serve to undermine, not strengthen, its security. Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile threats topped the agenda on Saturday at the annual 49th Security Consultative Meeting in Seoul. To better counter those threats, South Korea's Defense Minister Song Yong-moo and U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis agreed to increase the deployment of U.S. strategic assets around the peninsula on a rotational basis, and to enhance cooperation so Seoul can obtain and develop state-of-the-art military equipment. The two also shared views on the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul, one of the key goals of the Moon Jae-in administration.
Secretary Mattis and I agreed to consider the timing and conditions of a condition-based OPCON transition. We will continue to work, develop and refine plans on this issue in time for the next SCM.
Mattis pulled no punches on North Korea, calling Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program illegal and unnecessary. He also stressed that Washington wants to find a diplomatic solution to the nuclear crisis, but military force remains an option, if need be.
The United States does not accept a nuclear North Korea. Diplomacy remains our preferred course of action, but as I have repeatedly emphasized, our diplomats are most effective when backed by credible military force in this sort of situation.
Mattis also took the opportunity to warn Pyongyang against the idea of ever trying to use its nuclear weapons offensively.
Make no mistake, any attack on the United States or our allies will be defeated. Any use of nuclear weapons by the North will be met with a massive military response, effective and overwhelming.
This year's Security Consultative meeting marks the first since President Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump took office earlier this year. The 50th SCM will be held in Washington in 2018.
North Korea has accelerated the threat that it poses to its neighbors and the world through its illegal and unnecessary missile and nuclear weapons programs, he stated, adding that recent developments, including a purported successful hydrogen bomb detonation by Pyongyang in September, have created a new urgency for the region. In recent months, the North has also lobbed 2 missiles, believed capable of carrying a nuclear payload, over Hokkaido and threatened to target the area around the U.S. territory of Guam with enveloping fire. The isolated nation has also said it might test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific Ocean. In response, the U.S. has sent powerful B-1B bombers from Guam for joint exercises with the Air Self-Defense Force over Japanese territory and the South Korean Air Force over the Korean Peninsula.
So let's start with Washington's latest show of force against North Korea. The U.S. flew 2 B-1B strategic bombers over the Korean Peninsula late Tuesday. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say the bombers flew from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam and entered the Korean Air Defense Identification Zone at around 8:50 p.m. Joined by South Korean F-15K fighters, the B-1Bs simulated air-to-ground missile firing over the East Sea. The South Korean military added that the regular deployment training is aimed at enhancing extended deterrence capabilities against North Korea. Late last month, the U.S. flew B-1Bs over international waters close to North Korea's east coast.
On Sunday, South Korea's Yonhap news agency reported that Seoul had signaled its intent to offer maintenance support for U.S. strategic military assets to be deployed there on a rotational basis in time of need, citing an anonymous government source. The source was quoted as saying that the plan conveyed Seoul's hope that the U.S. will expand its missions on the Korean Peninsula without any concerns over issues of maintenance, fuel supplies and so forth. The weekend flight of the B-2, which can carry conventional as well as nuclear bombs, comes just ahead of Trump's Asia tour, which is scheduled to kick off with a visit to Japan between November 5th to 7th. That visit will include talks with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe that are expected to focus on the North Korean nuclear crisis.